Hi everyone, Ben and Hannah here, your favorite conference training people, to talk to you about what we're doing at conference. Very exciting. Hannah, say hi.
Hi everyone, good to see you again.
So what we're going to cover today, how to chair a conference workshop for those of you who are going to be chairing, how to be a rapporteur. Why we say rapporteur and not reporter, I don't know, but that's what it is. We want we're going to cover what's expected of you at the Young Greens stall if you're doing a shift there, what's expected of you if you're fundraising for the Young Greens, what's expected of you if you are an SOC vote counter or a mic runner or on the front desk. We've also got like reminders and stuff as well of some of the things that are happening at conference, which we want you to come along to. So
lovely. Yeah. Cool. So we're just going to talk very quickly first about how to chair a conference workshop. It's very, very simple. That's the first thing that I will say. And I think it always seems quite daunting. It definitely was quite daunting for me and Ben when we first did our first workshop. But once you've done one, you can do them all. I think you just need to kind of try it out, practice it, use these 4 or 5 hints, as a bit of a guide. And once you've done it, it'll just come natural to you. I think the ones that have already, agreed to chair and agreed to report, I've also received Martin Hemingway's guide from SOC. That's a bit of a longer, more in-depth guide, but this is basically the basics that you need to know to chair a conference workshop that we're going to provide in this video. So I would definitely say, be there at least 5-10 minutes before your workshop. It might be good to be there at the previous workshop if possible too, just so you can see how the previous one has been run and like the mood of the room. You might find some people from the last workshop stay to your workshop, but most of the time people are changing in and out all the time. So it's up to you. If you want to get there for the last workshop, watch that one through. So just so you make yourself known to the room as well and that kind of thing. That's quite good idea. But if not, be there 5-10 minutes before. When you sit down at the front of the room, you'll have yourself, you'll have the rapporteur next to you, and somewhere in the audience, usually, there'll be a representative of SOC. So right at the very beginning, introduce yourself, what party you're from. Sometimes, if you want to say, part of the 30 under 30 scheme, sometimes people even say, my first workshop that I've chaired, and then it almost gives the room a bit of sympathy for you, a bit to go easy on you, that kind of thing, just to make it a bit easy for you, that kind of thing. So that's quite a good thing to say if you're feeling a bit uncomfortable. So I would say, my name is Hannah Graham, Young Greens co-chair from Islington Green Party, my first time chairing a workshop. That's the kind of thing that you might want to say if possible. Then you introduce the reporter or let them introduce themselves. And then you say, is there a representative of SOC in the room? And they'll just give you a wave. Basically, they're there to answer any constitutional questions if anything comes up, and any sort of technical questions. So you can put things to them if anything gets like that in the room. You then basically announce the workshop title. So what the number is and what the title is going to be called. You announce 1 minute of attunement. Now, what that is, it's basically just a minute of silence for people to kind of gather their thoughts and read the motion text if they haven't had a chance to read it beforehand. So it's always a good idea to have that 1 minute of attunement, sometimes before every single motion if you want to, sometimes before each session, but sometimes the audience might request every single motion. So it's up to you how you want to do that. But as a rule of thumb, it's always good to do it every single motion. But do make sure you ask somebody to hold the door during that time so nobody can go in or out. Just makes it silent and, so people can read the motion in peace, really. Then the order. So what you would do is say, please can I have the proposer of this motion? The proposer would then come to the front of the room, or sometimes they would do it just at their seat or stand up, depending on how they were comfortable, and they would introduce the motion. So they would give 1, 2, 3 minutes of a bit of a speech, just explaining the motion, what it's aiming to change, and what it does, basically, and why it's important. And then you would say, is there an opposer for this motion? Now, sometimes there is, and then they would do the same. They'd do sort of 1-2 minutes of what they wanted to say. Sometimes there isn't an opposer. Just give it a couple of seconds just to see if there is anybody. Now, if there is, if there is an opposer, fine, then you can ask for the proposer to come back on that and to speak on that. But if not, then you can ask for any questions or contributions from the room. So a lot of the time people will just have a question like, have you thought about that? Or was this thought about during the motion? Or have you spoke to this group? Or that kind of thing. And then always give the proposer the right to reply as well. So let them answer the question and just kind of give it a guide on, making sure the room is balanced, before you take the straw poll. So if there's questions, contributions, and, always make sure the proposer has the right to reply and give them a couple of minutes at the end to kind of sum up the motion and respond to the things and the questions and things that are in the room, just to kind of balance it off before you take the straw poll. Now, then it's a straw poll. And then what that means is basically a bit of an indication of what the vote's going to be before it gets to conference floor. It's not anything binding. It's just a bit of a numbers game, really. It's just a bit of an indication of how it's going to go and what the mood of the room was like. So just say, I'd like to take this to a straw poll. All those in favour, raise your hand. Then they'll raise the hand. You can then take a record, or the rapporteur will take a record anyway. You might need some help with counting, depending on how many people are in the room. So all those in favour, raise the hand. Count the people that are in favour. All those against, raise your hand. Count the people against, and any abstentions. So the rapporteur will take down all the details of that. And make sure you finish on time as well. So usually you'll only have 15, 20 minutes, depending on the length of the motion, to actually hold this debate. So, do make sure you finish on time. Don't be afraid to cut debates short as well. If it's getting to the stage where there's lots of questions, lots of debate, and it's getting to your time, you can't run over, because every single workshop has a slot for a reason. And if you run over, that means the next one has less time, and that one might be very contentious as well. So do make sure you finish on time so people can get to other places. So don't be afraid to just say, I'm sorry, it's coming to the end of our workshop. We need to take a straw poll now. Thank you for your time. So I hope that's given you a bit of an indication of how to chair a conference workshop. This is just a basic guideline, like I say, but if you do all of these things, you can't really go wrong. I don't think, Ben, have you got anything else to add?
No, what I would say is absolutely the one thing that you should remember is that you're the chair. So if you want somebody to shut up, you can tell them to shut up. I do it in a nicer way than that, of course. If you want, you're totally in charge of the room. So absolutely be confident with that power. Like Hannah says, if you do all of these things, if you make sure things are balanced and you make sure you finish on time, then you've done a great job. Just don't be scared to use the power of the chair to move things along.
Yep. Cool. And just feel comfortable with it. And if you get to the stage where, sometimes it happens, maybe you forget what to say or you forget what the next bit is, don't worry, because actually there's a lot of people in the room who have been chairs before, or they've been to a lot of workshops before, let's be frank. So there'll be a lot of people that say that'll casually remind you, or that they'll say, oh, you've forgotten about attunement, or you've forgotten about the opposer. If that happens, all you need to do is just say, I'm really sorry, can I have the opposer? Or can I have, we'll go back a step, and that's absolutely fine as well. Just explain it's your first time, and that's also fine. Don't let them control it. Like Ben says, you're the chair. So if that happens, fine to apologise and then move on. Are we going to move to the next slide then? Yeah.
I think so. Thank you, Hannah. So one side of it is being the chairing of the conference workshop. The other side is the rapporteur, which Hannah has mentioned. So again, one thing that you ought to do is make sure that you get there a good sort of 5 or 10 minutes before the workshop. That's just to make sure that you make sure you're in the right place, and you can kind of identify who's going to be chairing and make yourself known to them. Then, as Hannah's kind of mentioned previously, they will kind of notify the room that you're there as the rapporteur, and that's going to be your role. Rapporteur in the workshop itself, you don't have to say anything. All your job is to note down sort of the main points of discussion and questions that come up. Key thing about this is that absolutely you want to sort of keep it quite brief. It's really not the case that you need to write down absolutely everything that's been said. All that you're trying to do when you talk about this in the plenary session, which I'll mention in a second, is just giving a brief indication of kind of what sort of the main points of contention were, what were the points of discussion, and also the details of the straw poll as well. So you're not reporting word for word what happened, you're just trying to sort of give an accurate representation of kind of what happened in that room. So what will happen is the discussion will go on as Hannah's kind of described, and the chair will kind of make sure that that happens. And what you'll want to do, having noted down the main points of discussion, once we get to kind of the end of the workshop, so keeping an eye on the clock as well, what you need to do is count the number of people who are in the room. You might be able to do that with the chair, or someone from SOC might sort of double check it with you as well, but absolutely make sure you do that. Then when the chair calls for the straw poll, you need to record the number of votes for, so everybody will put up the hand and you just count them, the number of votes against, and any abstentions as well, just so that you have those listed and written down. So that's what kind of happens within the workshop itself. You're essentially just a silent observer who records accurately what happened. The time when you actually need to be speaking about the workshop is in plenary session. So plenary, you remember, is kind of outside of the workshops. It's the big session in conference where all of the voting happens. And what will happen there is the chair will introduce each of the motions, and they'll say, they'll get them to be introduced by the motion proposer, and then what they'll say is words to the effect of, and can we have the workshop rapporteur as well, or can we have the workshop report? At that stage, you need to either identify yourself in like the audience and get a mic across to you just by waving your arm, or you can go up to the front where the sort of lectern is. What you want to do there with your sheet of paper that you've got is report the number of people who were in the room, the general points of discussion, so all the things that you wrote down. Generally, you want to be sort of saying things like, oh, this was an uncontroversial motion, if it was uncontroversial, or this was quite contentious and there was a lot of discussion about X, Y, and Z point. So really just give the whole of plenary, those who didn't have the opportunity to get along to the workshop, an indication of sort of what the mood of the room was. So you'll cover that, keep it nice and brief. You probably don't want to be speaking for any longer than a minute, really, unless there was lots and lots and lots and lots to say. And then what you want to do is then outline how many votes in favour there were, how many votes against, and any abstentions. Now, the only other thing that we haven't mentioned at this stage is if there have been any sort of amendments to motions and such. So as well as the role of the chair, for some of the motions will be with amendments in them, the chair's job will be to take straw polls of those amendments as well. And when they come back to plenary, you need to make sure that you kind of report the votes for any amendments as well. But that will be clear depending on kind of who's chairing, and the chair will ask for kind of the different votes and the different numbers as and when. So that's sort of it for the rapporteur. Like I say, it's very, very easy. Note down the main points of discussion, make sure you count the people in the room, make sure you count the votes in favour and votes against, and make sure that you're there in the plenary session as well to report on it. Because there's no point being the workshop reporter if you're not in the plenary when it needs to be reported back to everybody. I don't know if there was anything else we ought to add, Hannah.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would just say is when it's your turn in the plenary, or even the motion before, try and get yourself down to the front, because sometimes when it comes to the motion and then they ask for the workshop report, it's almost like that person's asleep and we're waiting ages for that person to come down. So just be ready. I would say, just, you know, if it's your motion that's coming up, the next motion, then just be ready at the front, just go up on the stage and give your report. The briefer the better, because like I say, you know, it's actually the motion is there to be debated. The report is just to give an indication of what happened in the workshop.
Super. So there are other roles as well that you will be covering at conference. So first things first, SOC vote counters, can't speak. So basically, for motions that are particularly controversial, in the plenary sessions, when we all hold up our little voting cards in favour or against, if it's too difficult to judge by eye, then what happens is somebody from SOC, Standing Orders Committee, basically runs around the room with a little clicker and tries to count how many people in favour, how many people against, and that's obviously how it's decided whether the motion passes or falls. So the SOC vote counters, it's just supporting them in that role. You will need to make yourself aware to SOC table, which will be in the main plenary hall. There will be a big sign. You can ask somebody, where are SOC? They will show you. Make yourself known to them and just say, hi, I'm volunteering to be a vote counter. They'll give you a little clicker and they'll sort of tell you what to do. It's worth noting that actually in some plenary sessions, if none of the motions are particularly controversial, though often they are, you might not actually be needed because there might never be a need for the vote count to happen because it might always be very clear kind of by eye. But that's that role.
Yep, mic running. So we've been told by SOC that basically if you're not needed as a vote counter, you'll probably be mic running or vice versa. So depending on what's needed, you know, you both report to the SOC table if you've chosen to do this selection, and you'll be told what to do. But if you report to the SOC table and say, hey, I'm a vote counter, or hey, I'm mic running, they might say, okay, we've got enough vote counters, we actually need another mic runner, and they'll give you a mic. So what that is you might have seen it at plenary before if you've been to conference, but basically they'll give you a microphone, and whenever anybody in the audience has a question or wants to speak, basically you will go and take that microphone to them and hand it. Now, it's not the job of the mic runner to pick the person in the audience, but it's the job of the chair. So sometimes that can get quite confusing. But what I would do as a mic runner is always watch the chair, because people will try and grab you and people will try and say, you know, I want to speak, I want to get a question in, but never kind of counteract what the chair's doing. So always let the chair pick somebody and then you go to them. If somebody tries to grab you, and just say to them, sorry, like, it's the job of the chair. Because I've been in that situation before where it's just got a bit confusing. But yeah, always, you know, make sure you clarify with the chair before you choose the person. Sometimes, and it doesn't happen all the time, but I know sometimes the mic runners do have letters as well. So to hold, like, so you're either A, B, C, or D, or numbers. So the chair might say mic runner 1 or something like that. That sometimes happens, but it's not been at every single conference. But again, SOC will make you aware of what your job is and how to make it easier for you as well on the day.
Absolutely. So that's those two. Front desk. This is an exciting one because it's something that we haven't done before, to my knowledge. No, basically, when people register for conference, there's like a little pack that you receive. You'll all receive one as well. When you walk into conference on the first day, you'll be greeted by somebody. They might be a fellow 30 under 30 if anybody has signed up for the shift. This will all be explained at the front desk. What you need to do, but essentially it's just greeting people, saying hello, welcome to conference. They'll give you their name and their local party, and you'll find the folder and give it to them. So what you'll need to do in that case is basically just present yourself to whoever's at the front desk and say, hi, I'm here from 30 under 30. I'm volunteering in this role for the first, for X, Y, and Z time. And they will tell you what to do, show you what to do. But it's simple job, but somebody's got to do it. So thank you for taking it on.
Cool. Young Greens fundraise, and this is where the exciting jobs come, because it's for the Young Greens rather than the Green Party. No, I'm joking. So what happens with Young Greens fundraising? As you're probably aware, we make an awful lot of income for the Young Greens at conference, and it's what pays for 30 under 30 scheme, it's what pays for training, action days, residentials, all sorts of different things that Young Greens run during the year. So it's really, really important that we try and make as much money as possible at conference. Now, Young Greens fundraising, what that usually covers, because they'll be selling merchandise on the stall, Ben will come on to that in a minute. What that usually covers is basically raffle ticket selling. So I mean, I don't know how many we usually sell, but I think last conference we made about £800–900 on just purely on raffle ticket selling, which, you know, as you can imagine, covers a lot of the 30 under 30 scheme. So it's really important. So basically what you'll just be doing is as simple as that, going around with raffle ticket booklets and with a bucket. The stall will let you know what the prices are. So always report to the stall before a fundraising shift, and they'll give you the bucket, and they'll give you the raffle tickets as well. Just going up to people that you feel like might look generous, and basically saying, you know, would you like to buy some Young Greens raffle tickets? They'll say to you, oh, what are the prizes? Now, a hint and tip, I always write down the prizes on the back of the raffle ticket booklet, so that whenever anybody says to you, what are the prizes, you can reel them off. But we usually have some really nice things. So Jenny Jones usually makes some jam. Oliver Dowding usually makes some homemade cider. We usually have a few books. We've had, you know, tours of a wind turbine factory before. We've had all sorts of things. Now, I don't know what exactly the prizes are this time, but we'll make sure they're written on the back for you. So if you get any sticky situations, you've always got the information. But again, it's just trying to sell as much tickets as possible, trying to raise as much money as possible, and always make sure that you take the money back to the stall after your shift.
Absolutely. So final thing that we have is the Young Green stall. So what you want to be doing there is essentially sitting at the stall, or standing if you prefer, within the conference venue. You'll be selling merchandise, which Hannah mentioned. So we have badges. We're hopefully going to have some tote bags as well. They'll have prices on them. So you just need to sort of staff the stall and manage that when people come and ask to buy them. You're also generally going to be a point of contact for anybody who's interested in what the Young Greens are doing. So, for example, they might have questions about what different Young Green sessions there are at conference. We're going to cover that in a second. They might want to know about how to be more involved. There might be older party members who want to come over and chat to you as a Young Green and find out what you're up to. So generally, it's just about being nice and smiley, being nice and happy, being as helpful as possible. You will be on the stall with another person, either from 30 under 30, from Young Greens Executive Committee. Georgia, the Young Greens staff member, might be around as well. So it shouldn't be any questions that you don't know the answer to. But yeah, it's just about sitting there, smiling, looking friendly, looking lovely, and just, yeah, being really approachable and welcoming. We'll also
One way to really maximise profits as well is when I'm sat in the stall, I ask anybody that comes up if they want any raffle tickets as well. So yeah, make sure you're selling raffle tickets on the stall too. Yeah, we'll also have flyers. We did last year anyway. I'm sure we will this year as well, just to advertise convention. So if any young people come up to the stall, you know, give them a flyer for convention and tell them what that is as well.
Yeah. So there'll be other things as well. There's a list that is given on the stall with instructions, which we're making as well. So keep an eye out for that. But that pretty much covers the volunteering opportunities. The only other thing that we want to remind you of is all of the super exciting fun things that the Young Greens are doing at conference that you're absolutely all going to come along to. So, for example, we have our Young Greens candidate community launch. Woohoo! This is happening on the Saturday lunchtime between 12:30 and 1:15. Basically, this is going to be where we launch what is the Young Greens candidate community. So that is the group, the space where we are offering training and guidance and all sorts of fun things to encourage Young Greens to be candidates in local elections. So absolutely, please do come along to that. We're going to have speakers who are councillors already, speakers who are Young Green Target to Win candidates, speakers who are from the Association of Green Councillors, all sorts of people. Hannah and I will be there, obviously. So do come along to that, and do bring people that you know from your local party, other Young Greens that you know. This is an event that's open to everybody. It's not just a Young Greens one, and we want to ensure that as many people in the party as possible know about it and really get involved. because we think this is going to be a fantastic way to try and encourage engagement between young Greens and local parties, when sometimes that's not always been the case.
Mm-hmm. We, as you probably already know from the emails I've sent this week, we have our final 30 under 30 meetup, and it's so sad because it's always going to be a bit of like a celebration, a bit of like, yeah, it is quite sad because it's going to be the final, you know, end of the scheme, basically your formal end of the scheme as well. For those who can't make it, I'm even more sad. We'll have a little bit of a gift, I would say, to hand out to you all. Those who can't make it, we'll see if we can post you one. Maybe we'll be that generous. But that's going to be on Sunday, 12:45 till 1:15 in IP08.
Lovely. Final serious thing. Lots of us, obviously, we were submitting the workshops as part of 30 under 30. What you need to make sure within your groups is that you are around and aware of who is going to speak about those workshops, speak about those motions in your workshops. So 10 to 1 is happening on Saturday between 9:40 and 10 o'clock. The Reform PIP one is happening on the Saturday between 1:15 and 1:30, and the People Not Numbers one between 3:25 and 3:45 on the Saturday as well. So make sure you have a conversation between yourselves before conference and you're ready to propose those motions within the workshops, answer any questions that folk might have about them, and also in plenary too. Obviously, we've submitted the motions, they're in the agenda. Let's absolutely make sure that we get them passed as well.
Mm-hmm. And both Ben and I will try our best to be at all three of those as well. So if you need any help, we can help you out from the audience floor. So is that everything? Any questions? So if you've got any questions about anything we've discussed, like I say, conference is next weekend. So you've got a bit of time just to maybe email us or like message on Facebook or anything like that beforehand. Any questions about anything that's been in this webinar, but hopefully it's been really helpful. And actually, if you've got any questions, the whole of conference, there's always people at the stall. Like actually, it's always quite a buzz, you know, of Young Greens. You can always find at least somebody at the stall to ask a question to if you need anything. So always report to the stall or Young Greens stall if you need anybody, or if you're lost and you've lost everybody, there's bound to be at least some Young Greens at the stall.
Exactly. So we hope this was informative. We hope this was helpful. We can't wait to see you at conference. It's going to be super lovely. Get in touch if you have any questions, like we say.
It's going to be a blast.
Woo! Bye. Bye, everyone. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.